Moisture's been moving away from the state and the heat's been moving in. And Brian, how are the plants across Oklahoma looking right now?
They're hurting.
They're hurting.
They're hurting.
Yeah.
But one of the neat things we're seeing, well, it's not neat. It's neat to me being a nutrient management specialist, so it's one of those interesting factors.
Yeah.
As we start looking at the plants, we're seeing more and more signs of potassium deficiencies across there, especially in our soybeans and our sorghum. That was planted a little bit later, that's actively growing right now. One of the problems that we'll get into is on soils that have moderate to low soil test potassium levels. When drought comes in, or we have these dry periods, we start seeing potassium deficiencies that we normally wouldn't. Potassium moves through the plant, to the plant through diffusion, through water. If you don't have that water around the root, we don't have that good flow of potassium into the plant. And if you combine that with soils that are already low in soil test potash, soil test potassium, we confound that. And so as of recent last week or two, I've been getting more and more images from across the state, especially in the eastern portion of the state, where we have low soil test potash levels anyways, more and more signs of potassium. Now, potassium symptomology is really easy to pick out from all the other nutrients. It's going to occur on the lower portion of the plant, the older, most mature leaves. It's going to have yellowing around the edge of the leaf. The necrosis yellowing is going to develop around the edge and go down towards the stem. Nitrogen, on the other hand, it's still those lower leaves, but nitrogen is down the middle of the leaf, going towards that. On corn, it'd be the midrib, or sorghum's midrib. And so we can separate nitrogen and potassium out that way.
Okay, are there certain plants that are showing more symptoms than others?
Soybean and sorghum right now are showing more symptoms of potassium. That's because they're the ones actively growing. Our corn crop is wrapping up.
Okay.
We're near done with our corn crop. The soybeans are the ones that are going, and so is the sorghum. So we see that. Now, it's much less likely in western Oklahoma. We don't see it in western Oklahoma. We have more of the higher soil test potassium. In that part of the state. It's the eastern part of the state that we're getting most of these images from and seeing it with our producers.
Okay, what would it look like on a plant? Take us through.
So it would look, if this leaf right here were deficient, it's going to start developing on the end as yellowing, and it's going to go down this outer edge.
Okay.
And so you're going to have a green arrow that actually points away from the plant when it's done. And it's also going to be on those older leaves, the older, more mature leaves at the bottom of the plant. Nitrogen is also occurring on those lower leaves, but it looks a little bit different. Nitrogen will also start yellowing on this tip, and it will progress so down the middle of the plant, down the midrib, and you have a yellow arrow pointing towards the plant.
Towards the plant, okay.
So potassium yellowing on the outer edges, nitrogen yellowing down the midrib or the middle of the leaf. That's going to be the same whether it's sorghum, corn, wheat, soybean, all those.
Well, and since we're with the corn right now, let's talk a little bit about how things look in the corn crop this year.
We're starting into the dry down process. So we've gone through grain fill, and we're slowly beginning dry down. You see the ears are starting to drop on some of the plants, meaning that we're that much closer to harvest.
So we're kind of out of the danger zone with corn anyway.
Yeah, at this point, these ears right here, we're out of the danger. We can't get a whole lot of bad happening. We can keep, this should be a little bit further along because the ears are starting to drop. See a little bit more of the dent starting to form. The kernels are getting a little bit harder. We're out of the milk and going into dough and the maturing stages now. It's a good sign, but those that may have been tasseling a week before, this stuff tasseled before the heat, which is good. So we have good grain fill all the way down the ear. Anything that had been tasseling a week or two later, unfortunately, probably is going to have some poor grain fill because of the heat, just killing the pollen, and that's what 100 degrees will do to you. It all depends on the length of maturity of the corn and just whenever it started tasseling. If it is able to tassel and pollinate prior to our heat, probably in good shape. And in fact, there's some guys looking at some really good corn crop. Anything that was starting to pollinate and tassel during that heat wave, we're going to have probably poor pollination, much like last year. Alpha toxins are going to increase across the board, and we're probably going to see a fair amount of low test weight, high alpha toxin corn coming in from the hot areas.
So the early planting season, early harvest season has really benefited the corn this year.
It has. If they were able to get in early into good moisture and get the corn up and going, it was a benefit of this year. and that we held off till June on our heat. You know, from a lot of stuff I've done in the past, we would tassel in Stillwater around June 20th. In the last 10 years of doing corn, June 20th is about an average tasseling date for when we would plant a lot of our research plots.
Right.
Hopefully we're tasseling before that. This probably tasseled early June.
Well, Brian, let's circle back to nutrients. What is the take-home message on this?
You know, this year it was soil sampling. A soil sample early in the year and fertilization could have avoided some of these deficiencies. They're just worsened with this drought. So, you know, soil sample. It's really important. It's not that expensive, and it'll save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run.
Okay, thank you much, Brian. And you can find a link to everything we talked about here on our website, sunup.okstate.edu.